Hey, let me holler at you for a second. See, there's this thing that's been burning me up for a minute, and I've kind of procrastinated about talking about it, but I feel like I'm doing people who are trying to do podcasting a disservice. So let me tell you why. See, most podcasters are out here building exactly what that is. That's a podcast, right? But see, the one thing that a lot of folk don't understand is I'm literally teaching you to build a client machine. And there's a massive difference between the two that nobody in the industry is talking about. See, you're over here stressing about episode topics. You're stressing about these upload schedules. Most are even stressing about what microphone to buy. Meanwhile, you haven't answered the only question that actually matters. And that is, what happens after someone listens? See, here's what I know. And you can check me on this one. You can fact check me. You can look for the receipts. You can do whatever you need to do. 90% of podcasters are creating content with no existing strategy, no conversational path, no back end, just the vibes and a bunch of hype. See, that's not business. It's not business at all. That's a very expensive hobby with a Lisping subscription. So here's what I'm going to do for you today. Today, I'm going to break down how to reverse engineer your entire podcast around one clear goal. So every episode that you create from this point on, every hook, every story becomes a strategic move towards revenue and not just reach. All right? If you're ready to do that, let's turn that conversation, because that's what we get ready to do, have a serious conversation. Let's turn that conversation into some real.
Welcome to Podcast for Profit, the show where podcasters become CEOs. I'm your host, Tony Porter, and every week I'm giving you the strategy, systems, and game you need to grow your audience, monetize your message, and build a seven-figure podcast business. No fluff, no cap, just real results. Let's get into it.
Currency. Hey, yo, what's good? Yo, what's good, everyone? Hey, man, welcome back to Podcast for Profits, the show where we turn conversations into currency. You know who I am, and if you don't, I'll explain it to you. I'm your host, Mr. Tony Porter. And if this is your first time here, let me tell you what Podcast for Profits is all about. We don't do fluff. We don't do the fluffy podcast tips. We don't chase the vanity metrics, the ones that look good but aren't good. We don't do that. We don't teach you how to grow your audience and hope the money shows up later. That's not what we do. See, we teach you how to turn your podcast into a client-generating machine, a revenue stream, and one of the biggest legacy assets that actually pays you. See, here's what you think your problem. You don't have enough downloads. You need better equipment, or you need to be on YouTube. You need a co-host, better editing, viral clips, man, whatever. First of all, let me tell you that's wrong. That's so wrong in so many ways. See, the real problem is not that, man. See, the real problem is you started your podcast without deciding what it's supposed to do. And I know you're sitting there thinking, man, the podcast, I got dope content. I got all the followers. And most of y'all building your podcast like you're creating a Netflix show. And that's great. You want the binge-worthy content. You want high production value. You even want the storytelling. That arcs, man, that's cool. But Netflix gets paid whether you watch it or not. You don't. Period. I mean, you really don't. You're a coach. You're a consultant. You are a service provider. And utmost and foremost, you are literally a podcaster. So your podcast is not supposed to entertain. It's supposed to convert. It's supposed to position you as the only logical choice when someone's ready to solve a problem that you solve. Now, I need to say this. If you out here and you building your podcast, but you're not building your podcast with an end goal in mind, from the jump, from day one, from the time that you get cracking, you're going to hit 100 episodes with a bunch of listeners who love you, adore you, but ain't nobody your client. You got zero. That means you get no pay. So if you stick around with me here and let me show you how to reframe, make some changes, everything about how you plan your content, structure your episodes, and show up on the mic, then we good to go. You feel me? All right, so let's quit playing around. So one of the most important things that you need to do is, let me tell you what I see all the time. So as a coach, I feel like it's my duty to sit around and talk to other coaches. And I'm not talking about sports coaches. I'm talking about business coaches. I'm talking about life coaches. I'm talking about coaches in the industry who get paid thousands of dollars to reach out to reach out to help someone solve a problem, right? Now, I talked to a coach. I've talked to several, but over the time, I've talked to a good friend of mine. He lives up in Ohio, and he's been podcasting for about 2 years. Has a dope show. His numbers is decent. You know, people are sliding in the DMs and sending him messages saying, I love your energy. But then I asked, how many clients came from your podcast, my guy? And then there's crickets. Again, how many clients came from the podcast? There was crickets. And then I'm like, so what happened? Like, trust me, probably will be getting a lot more income, revenue stream. But he hit me with this one here. He says, well, it's for brand awareness. I'm thinking brand awareness is what Coca-Cola does. You're not Coke. You're not Pepsi. Hell, you're not Budweiser. My dude, you just went out and bought you a brand new Mercedes-Benz. And I wasn't trying to meddle in my man's business or anything, but I was in it. I'm sorry, I was. And the only reason why I was is because I like his podcast. It's up and, he rebranded it. But what happened is when he did it, he didn't lay out his focus. And I told him, I said, you need clients, man. You got people on your payroll that you got to maintain and take care of. You got your kids in school. You got the brand new car on top of the other car that you purchased a couple years ago. And so I'm sitting there thinking, and I'm like, let me tell you what shifted for me. And it shifted for me from when I was back in the days and hanging out on the block before I even knew what podcasting was or what a podcast funnel was. I learned that if you want something to sell, you got to build it backwards. Now, here's what a lot of people don't understand. When you out there and you're trying to be an entrepreneur, the best way to do things is to reverse engineer it. And what I mean by reverse engineering, start with your end goal in mind. You don't start with the recipe. You start with what the customer wants to feel after they try your product. See, when I jumped into the game several years ago, I reverse engineered what I had was called Snap Crackle Gourmet. I wanted them to feel what this popcorn, because it was a gourmet popcorn business, and it still is. But I want them to feel what it's like to have that popcorn that when you pop it in your mouth, that flavor just hits you. Like one of the most absorbing flavors is a cheesy ranch. And when it hits you, it's just like, the taste is savory. It's got that nacho taste. And every time somebody purchases that cheesy ranch at a carnival or at a street fair, a flea market, that taste is, hey man, let me know you got a website. Let me check it. I want to get that cheesy ranch, man. I want to get double bags next time. Cool. And so I take that information and I listen to what it is and I listen to what people say. So I had the end goal in mind. And so when I reverse engineered that whole experience around what I thought people was going to feel like when they ate that. And it's the same thing you got to do with your podcast. Your listeners don't need another 45-minute interview with 10 tips to scale your business. What they need is when they finish your episode, they need to be like, damn, I've been doing this wrong. I need help. So it doesn't make a difference what, service you provide. If you're a coach, you're a consultant, you're a podcaster, you're a creator. They need to have that damn moment. Do you remember when Kevin Hart was interviewing Don Cheadle? And Don Cheadle told him he was 56-year-old. Kevin Hart said, damn, that's the type of moment that you want. Okay? That's the moment that you need. You want that person to feel like, oh, okay, he done tapped in. I'm good. I'm Gucci. All right, so let's do it. So you don't need downloads, not even the followers. That's the end goal. You don't need to have the downloads and the followers. You need to have that moment to when they say, oh, okay, I'm feeling dude. Yeah, that works for me. So decision-making clarity that leads them straight to your offer. That's what they need. They need to know if my end goal is here and I'm listening to this episode, and when I get to the end, well, this is what's going to help me to the next point. Let me go on and pull out this credit card, or let me go on and reach out and see what the next step is if there's no call to action. But you better have a call to action. All right. So the one thing you got to do is, man, make sure you're having a serious conversation. Because once you lock that in, the entire podcast becomes a strategic client acquisition machine. All right. So that's what we're trying to do, man. We're trying to get to that point where you're not just having an expensive hobby. You are sitting here generating something that someone loves. So, all right, we on the same page? Cool. All right. Now listen to me. There's nothing better than to have someone help you get to a certain point. Now, we just talked about something that you wanted to have, and that's a client acquisition machine, right? Once you finish, there will be a link, and that link will get you over to the client generating podcast blueprint. It's a freebie. We're giving it away for free. We generally would charge you about $97 for that, man. But listen, I feel like there's too much gatekeeping going on. So let me give you something that can help you jumpstart your journey or redefine your journey. So you got that? All right, let's keep going, man. And again, man, I appreciate everybody making the stop today because this conversation is something that needed to be had. January has come to an end, and we are stepping into the month of February. There's a whole lot going on in February, but you need to have an end goal in mind, no matter what it is. So let's do this. Let's say this. So one of the questions that needed to be asked is, how do you actually do this? So let me give you the framework. I call it the end goal blueprint. Now, you might need to rewind this a couple times, pause this, go back, listen, and write this down. But this is a 3-part system this framework that helps you get to that point. So what you need to do is, in the first step in the framework is define the one decision you want them to make. Not 5, just 1. See, do you want them to book a call with you? Do you want them to download your lead magnet? You heard what I just said. You want them to join your email list, or you want them to buy a low ticket offer? Preferably, I prefer to give away something for free because I want you to understand that I am the guy that you could trust. I'm not out here trying to get over on anyone. See, in this day and age, you gotta reassure your listeners and reassure the people who are working with you. This is not what you're trying to do. All right. So pick one. Everything in your episode should make that decision feel obvious and make it feel low risk. If your CTA changes every week, you're confusing the hell out of somebody. You understand what I'm saying? You are definitely confusing the hell out of somebody. And you know what you know what happens when people get confused? It kills conversions. And that's the one thing you don't want to do. Now, number 2, reverse engineer every episode around that decision. Reverse engineer every episode around that decision. See, this is where most people, they will screw this up in a heartbeat, thinking they're doing an excellent job. They create content they want to talk about instead of creating that content that moves people toward that decision. That's the one thing that will generate that one piece right there is the one thing that a lot of coaches, a lot of consultants, a lot of podcasters, a lot of creators, that's the one thing that will mess up everything that they got going on. So what I did was I said, let me give away this real quick tip. And here's what I do. I start with the end goal. Let's say it's to download the Blueprint 2026, right? That's the end goal, right? Fine. Then I ask, what does someone need to believe, that they need to want this? So once I ask that question, then I ask, what story, reframe, or insight helps them to believe that? That becomes the episode. Your content isn't random. That's what we seem to fall short. So your content isn't random. It's a psychological bridge from where they are, confused, stuck, and guessing, to where they need to be, clear, ready, and trusting you. And listen to me, man. That's so much better than throwing your hook out in the water and hoping the fish bites with no bait. And then the last part to this whole framework is build the conversational path into an episode. Now, this is where the magic truly happens. You're not just dropping a CTA at the end and hoping. Again, you're not throwing your hook in the water with no bait. You're engineering belief throughout the episode. Now, there's a sequence. There's a playbook to this. And this is what people in the podcast business, coaching business, when they making content, here's what they use. They use a hook. Challenge their current thinking. The problem reframe. Show them what they are doing isn't working. Story. Provide, or should I say prove, you've been there and you figured it out. The breakdown. Give them a taste of the solution, but not the whole thing. And then you hit them with that CTA, that call to action. Offer the next logical step. Your lead magnet, your blueprint, your call. So the lead magnet for me is the client generating podcast blueprint. You understand? How do you get it? Jump on over to my Instagram. I am Anthony Porter. And one of my reels, we break this down and we teach this inside of the reel. Comment Blueprint 2026. And we're going to send it right to you. See, every section builds trust. Every section removes friction. By the time they get to the CTA, man, it feels like that's the only smart move that they can make. Now, look, if this is landing for you. If this is at G5 and it's landed on that Las Vegas Strip and you're on your way to the casino to drop 100K, go on over and follow me over on IG at I am Anthony Porter. All right. Follow me over there because every week I'm breaking this stuff down deeper inside for the Blueprint 2026. I'm breaking it down. This is how you turn content into currency. This is one of the ways that I turn conversations into currency. All right. So think about this because we about to bring this home. Your podcast, maybe you're 10 episodes in, maybe you're 100. I don't know. I'm speaking to you and you got to answer that question. Either way, here's what I want you to ask yourself. What's the one thing I want people to do after they listen to me? Not engage, not share, not leave a review. What's the business outcome? Because if you can't answer that one thing, one sentence, your podcast does not, and I repeat, your podcast does not have a strategy. It's just a vibe. And vibes don't pay the bills. You understand what I'm saying? Here's what changes when you reverse engineer around a clear goal, a clear end goal. Your content gets tighter because you're not rambling, you're building towards something. Your listeners know what to do next because you've been guiding them through the whole time. You haven't played around with them. You've been giving them that game, that nourishment the whole time you've been sitting here on your episode. And then you start seeing real ROI, and that's return on investment. Because you're not just creating content, you're creating a client journey. Now, that's the difference between podcasters who stay stuck at 200 downloads and the ones who are building a 6 to 7 figure business from a weekly show. You don't need 1 million listeners. You need a clear path from the play button being pushed to payment. You understand? You feel me? And that's what we do over at Podcast for Profits. We turn conversations into currency, man. Not by chasing algorithms, but by building systems. You got me? We build them systems, all right? So here's what I want you to do right now. If you're sitting there and this episode flipped the switch for you, if this flipped the switch and you realize your podcast has been missing a strategy, a platform, and then there's time to stop guessing and start building for your intentions, right? Check this out. Again, I've put together the Blueprint 2026. It's my complete roadmap to turning your podcast into a client-generated machine. No theory, no fluff. Just the exact framework I use with most of my clients, the exact framework a lot of my students use with their frameworks, with their clients, with their podcasts, who are booking calls and closing deals. And that's happening from the minute that they hit the record button from their shows every single week. So in order for you to do this, I need you to go over and look me up and follow me on Instagram at I am Anthony Porter. This is where I'm dropping the blueprint because daily breakdowns on how to do this the right way is the only way. You've got talent. You've got to just have the perfect message. Now let's build that system that turns your conversations into currency. Hey man, I appreciate y'all stopping by today. Man, again, I am Tony Porter, host of Podcast for Profits. Let's get it done, man. 2026 is our year. I'm going to see y'all when I see y'all. Peace.
Thanks for tuning in to Podcast for Profit. If you got value today, share this episode with a creator who's ready to level up. And make sure you hit follow so you never miss the moves we're making. If you're serious about turning your podcast into a business, tap the link in the show